I'm going to start the recorder used later on and share my screen here. Okay, you see the syllabus?
Yeah, I do. I opened, yeah, but...
Yeah, okay. So, I do have Chapter 6 lecture already posted there. It's a recording from last semester, but other than any intro, it's going to be all the same. So the main thing that I wanted to make sure everybody's clear on now is that any assignment that you can do that would contribute to your final paper, write it on that subject. You know?
Right. So related to the paper.
Yeah, that way you're working on pieces of the paper all along, rather than doing assignments on a random topic and then having to redo that for your paper. Okay?
I really appreciate for your...
Yes. Yeah. So the assignment this week is the company's competitive position. So discuss when to pursue an offensive or defensive strategic move to improve the company's market position. You could make that about the company you're discussing. So do they use vertical integration? Do they use an offensive or defensive strategy? So you can write it based on, you know, an analysis of what they're doing, and that can then become a piece of your final paper. So one thing that I wanted to point out again is that your original posts, there's a mistake here. It should be 250 to 300 words, and the response should be 50 to 100.
Right.
So I'll update that. I put a 3 instead of a 2 there.
Well, it was 300. I mean, I was trying to come up with 3, but I came up with one of the responses. I think it was more than you asked. But
yeah, that's fine if you go over. But I don't want assignments where a person does an analysis in like 50 words, because that's not going to be a deep enough analysis.
Yeah.
So the discussion then, yeah, that competitive position, discuss it in terms of the company that you're researching, and then assignment 4 is based on the syllabus, and let's see, you're submitting an outline, a detailed outline of your research paper. Okay? So that's not that difficult of an assignment, but think through what you want to cover, what points you want to make, and just draw it out as an outline. That way I can give you some input early on as to whether I think you should include another section, or if I think you're going too detailed and you need to back up a little bit so that you don't end up with a huge paper. So I'll give you some guidelines along that way.
Yeah, it's clear. Thanks.
So, and then the chapter, strengthening a company's competitive position, is a very interesting chapter. This is where you really start to see what a company can look like and the possibilities. So I'm not going to go through it, but I'm going to just point out a few highlights. So, you know, a company, every company has a competitor, and every company probably has lots of competitors. So if someone says, well, this company has no competitors, they do, because that money isn't just sitting in someone's bank, it's being spent somehow, right?
Right.
So in class today, I had a student who was doing a presentation, and she said, my business has no competitors whatsoever. And it has very, very strong competitors, but what she did was she took two industries and she merged it into one business. So she doesn't have any competitor who has merged those two items together. But she has competitors in this domain and she has competitors in this domain. So she has two sets of competitors, and she has to convince people that she's better for having one unified company.
Well, see, in my case, I apologize to interrupt you. In my case, SiriusXM, they do not have competitors in because I mean, there is no other company, satellite radio company, but they have competitors like with the local broadcasting radio. They have competitors with internet. So I mean,
Yes.
there's always definitely competitors.
So you would address those competitors and then explain how they have a competitive advantage because of how they formulated their business.
Right.
You know, so I think that's one of the very important things to realize is that you may be unique in one way, but if that product exists in any format, anywhere, or if there's a substitute for it, then you have competitors because substitutes are also a line of competition. So a while back, I worked with a company that had a bowling alley, and they were saying, you know, we have no competitors because we are the only bowling alley in town. So then we went through the process of analyzing, well, it's Saturday night and I'm sitting at home and I want to go do something. What are my options? I could go bowling. I could go to laser tag. I could go to the movies. I could go out to a restaurant. I could go to the mall. So what are all the types of entertainment that I could go engage in? And so it's very fragmented, even though there's only one bowling alley. So on the other hand, if there's a bowling league, then obviously there's no competition. That league is going to meet at your bowling alley because that's the only venue. So you have to look creatively at how that competition is coming into play. To me, this is where business starts to get really, really interesting. So we're going to talk about, you know, the rivals, choosing which rivals you attack. So the offensive strategy, what is the defensive strategy? So the purposes and how do you work that? How do we strengthen the firm's market position based on what we do? So the range of activities, the breadth of products and services. At what point do you say we're too broad and we're offering too much and it's no longer working for us? We need to actually bring it back in and offer a smaller set of options. Or the company who only offers one thing starts to say, I'm losing out on a lot of sales because when someone wants a complementary product, they have to go to the competitor and then they just stay with the competitor. So that scope of operations is very, very important in choosing a strategy and figuring out how you're going to grow. And then there's the choices of vertical integration, right? So sometimes a retailer buys out the trucking system, buys out the warehouses, and even buys out the manufacturers. Well, that's a good example of Walmart.
Right.
Okay. Where it was a retailer and they've just bought up everybody above them. You have a trucking company that maybe was a small trucking company transporting goods across the US, and then they bought another trucking company that was selling in Mexico. They bought another one that was selling in, or traveling, you know, distributing in Canada. And they bought another one from the West Coast. So they start integrating by vertical is going up, right? Up the chain. Horizontal integration is you buy your competitors out, and now you're the only one who offers something in that space. So let's see. A lot of times companies opt for a strategic alliance, right? So if you take IKEA, for example, IKEA does not own the little manufacturing plants all over Eastern Europe. So when they expanded their worldwide market, the people they had in Sweden building their furniture no longer could produce enough. And their model is they give you the plans and set goals of production with you, and you build their product and ship it back to them. But they don't own all those manufacturers. So it has allowed them to actually keep their cost structure very low, and it has allowed a lot of individually, independently owned businesses in the furniture industry to survive in Europe. And not only survive, but actually to thrive. Okay. And you can get into, you know, analyzing whether those little mom and pop shops can actually thrive. Is IKEA, the big corporation, gouging them? You know, but this whole idea of having strategic alliances is used all over the place. I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, iPhone or Apple sued Samsung.
Yeah.
Okay. But what they don't tell you is that they license a bunch of their production to Samsung.
To each other.
So,
yeah.
To each other, you know. So Samsung does this really well. So Samsung makes it for themselves and makes it for Apple.
Yeah, right. Some
And then Apple has something. Yeah. So where do you draw the line, right? It becomes this really complicated situation where companies could actually be infringing on each other's property, intellectual property, but they were kind of given permission to. So I don't know enough about that situation to know whether that one lawsuit was warranted or not. But Apple and Samsung have had all sorts of conflict on both sides over and over again because they're licensing from each other. So anyway, hopefully you find this chapter really interesting and very helpful to you. And I wish you guys all a good week.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Any specific questions then that you have?
Well, not right now. I will appreciate almost a private lesson.
Oh, yeah. It's really for anybody who wants to take the time to show up. So I do get emails here and there from your classmates. So they are interacting here and there. Yeah.
Well, I still want to come every time at 6 because it helps to be kept organized.
Exactly.
I dedicate this time for class and
yeah.
And I have another paper going on right now. It's like research.
Yeah.
Trying to keep up.
So anytime that you have a question, you can email me.
Right.
I have not been good at checking my email every day. So if you email me and I don't respond right away, send me a text or give me a phone call, you know, and I will get to a computer and look it over right away. Well, I had someone call me yesterday, and we talked a little bit, and then she sent me an email following up, and I went on the computer and took care of it. So I'm available for you guys.
Well, thanks a lot.
And this week is our halfway mark, so
actually.
Yeah. Time's going by fast, right?
3 more weeks and we'll be submitting final.
Yes, yes. So at any point, if you want to have me look at your paper or give you input before the end of the term, just let me know. Okay.
Oh yeah. I'll try to start working on it.
And I offer this to any of my students. If you submit your final draft before the deadline and you want me to look it over, I will grade it with the grade rubric and give you all the feedback and let you correct it and resubmit it.
Okay, nice. Thanks.
Okay. So if you work a little bit of it ahead of time, you're able to take advantage of that. So it can be really helpful.
Thanks a lot for your time.
You're welcome.
I guess it's all straight right now.
Okay.
Okay, well, you have a nice week too.
Thank you, you too. Good night.
Good night.